So today we will talk about the organizational structure and administration of stock exchanges in India. One of the important elements of stock exchanges is that the management needs to be efficient and the governance needs to be ethical, and to ensure that Securities Exchange Board of India has come up with a definitive protocol, and all the stock exchanges needs to follow and adhere to this governance system, given the fact that stock markets and stock exchanges are subject to all types of frauds, whether it is frauds within the stock exchanges, frauds committed by the companies, or these days you also have cyber attacks and so many other vulnerable risks stock exchanges faces. And as a result of all this, Sebi is very proactive, and of late Sebi has become very conservative also, to ensure that uh, investors are not suffering. So therefore, a proper mechanism is in place to ensure that stock markets do function efficiently. So what SEBI has done is, as a part of its protocol, SEBI has instructed all the stock exchanges in India to follow this form of organizational structure, which is broadly classified into four divisions. First, SEBI gives guidelines about the ownership and the management. So how the ownership and management should function. And then you have the regulatory framework. So regulatory framework talks about which are the different acts, which are the different laws under which stock exchanges India has to function. So these are the laws and regulations which stock exchanges should ensure that they follow these. So these are the different laws which needs to be adhered by the stock exchanges. Then the governance of the stock exchanges is taken care by the governing body. So the governing body is the administrative body, and what is the structure of governing body, who are the members, what is their qualification, who appoints them, all that is also described in detail by SEBI. And in case if you want to become a member of the stock exchange, what are the criterias to become the member of the stock exchange? So this is the complete regulatory framework. This is the complete organizational structure. Now this it is very important to follow this kind of organizational structure to ensure that and to minimize that there are no frauds and there is no misgovernance, right? So one of the important uh, aspect of this organizational structure, what you see here on the screen, is the ownership and management. And as far as the ownership and management is concerned, SEBI has brought two significant changes. One is called corporatization. So all the exchanges should be corporatized. And second one is demutualization. So these are the two important principles of ownership and management which needs to be adhered and followed by all the stock exchanges in India. In fact, most of the stock exchanges in the world follow this. So this is a kind of a global standards followed across the stock exchanges. So first of all, what do you mean by corporatization? Basically, corporatization means that all the stock exchanges in India should be registered or should be formed as a company, right? Now you have different forms of organizational structures which you have studied in your earlier semesters, which includes sole proprietorship, partnership, Hindu undivided family, cooperative society, and also a company. So you have gone through the pros and cons of various forms of organizational structures, right? Every organizational structure has its own limitation, but company form of organizational structure is considered to be superior on account of various reasons. A company is said to have one of the important feature called perpetual succession. That means unlike a sole proprietor, when the owner dies, the business also gets diluted, right? Similarly, in case of partnership, any of the partner dies, there may be conflict, there may be issues. But here in case of a company, it's not the case because company goes on forever. So members will come, members will go, shareholders will come, shareholders will go, but a company has perpetual existence. It goes on forever, even in case of crisis. So you may argue, sir, what happens to some of the companies who have suffered financial setbacks. There are some of the companies who have financial crisis. So in case of such crisis, what happens? The answer is, in case of such crisis, companies don't get shut. Even if it is a worst case scenario, companies are generally taken over by some other company, right? Satyam had a major scam, but the company was not closed. The company was taken by Tech Mahindra. Similarly, you have Jet Airways, which is suffering major financial crisis, and Jet Airways is also on the verge of being taken over by some other corporate enterprise. So generally, companies don't get shut, right? Companies have a very long existence. So what SEBI is saying that in India, if you want to establish a stock exchange, you can't have stock exchange established under sole proprietorship format. So you should establish a stock exchange as a company, right? So because a stock exchange should enjoy the benefits what a company gets to enjoy, right? So a company has features which are very much suitable for stock exchange type of business. So most of the stock exchanges in India are registered or incorporated as association of person under section 25 of Companies Act, right? So basically all stock exchanges in India is company. So that is called corporatization, right? So in India, you can't establish a stock exchange which is run by individuals and partners, because in case if SEBI gives permission for individuals and partnership firms to start a stock exchange, it may lead to various kinds of conflicts. And that is where the concept of demutualization comes into picture. So demutualization ensures that there is no conflict of interest and there is no misgovernance. So what demutualization says is that ownership and management should be separated from each other. Ownership and management cannot be clubbed with each other, right? Now let me give you an example as to what will happen in case if proper demutualization does not exist. In case if there is no system in place, it may lead to disaster, right? For example, let's say I'm an individual and I've invested some 500 crores to start a new stock exchange in India. Okay, so in my stock exchange, let's say I have named my stock exchange as Bharat Stock Exchange, BSC, right? So one more BSC here. So Bharat Stock Exchange. So in my stock exchange, I also have more than 1,000 companies being listed. So whenever a company does any kind of corporate action, whether it is declaring dividend, whether it is getting merged, whether it is getting demerged, whether it is declaring dividend, whether it is declaring bonus shares, whether it is declaring stock split, whether it is buying back its share, any kind of corporate decision, a company has to first notify to the stock exchange. Stock exchange will notify to the public, right? So these are called corporate actions. So let's say a company has got a major approval. Let's say one of the Indian company, Cipla, has got a major approval from US FDA for making COVID vaccine here in India, and its COVID vaccine is 100% effective, not just on human beings, but all sorts of living creatures. So this information has to be given to the stock exchange stating that our vaccine is being approved by United States Federal Drug Administration and it can be commercialized within few weeks. So this information will be sent to all the stock exchanges and stock exchanges will disclose this to the public. So stock exchanges will release this information in the market. So now the first hand information is given to stock exchange, that's to Bharat Stock Exchange, my stock exchange. Now what happens if I only use this information for my own benefit? Let's say I am the one who gets all the information firsthand. So in my stock exchange, what I've done is the moment I get this information that Cipla has got major approval and the company's fortunes is about to change, I buy all the shares of Cipla because I know that tomorrow, the moment this release happens, the share price will skyrocket. So I have bought all the shares. I've informed all my friends, my relatives to buy the shares of Cipla. So tomorrow when this information is released in the media, investors will rush to buy and this will trigger demand and this will indeed lead to increase in the share prices. So I'll become rich. So how don't you think it's absolutely wrong that I'm the owner of the stock exchange and I'm only doing trading and I'm only getting benefited? So that's the reason Sebi says ownership is different, management is different. If you're the owner of the stock exchange, you can't do trading. You're not allowed to do trading. You're not allowed to take part even in the operational activities that has to be taken care by the management. So ownership don't have to interfere in the managerial activities. So owners cannot do trading. Management and its family members and their relatives also can't do trading. So if I am one of the managers in Bombay Stock Exchange, my relatives can't trade. So that's the kind of condition which is put forth by Sebi. Right, which is quite interesting. Otherwise, what will happen? This will lead to chaos because I will use this inside information and I'll only trade and I'll only get benefited. So that's the demerit of a sole proprietorship because sole proprietorship cannot separate ownership and management. But in case of a company, it is possible to separate ownership and management, right? So the owners are the shareholders and shareholders can be promoters also, right? And they appoint the board of directors who are responsible for taking major strategic decisions. So board of directors, again, the decisions of the board of directors can harm the shareholders, can sometimes be not beneficial to the shareholders, and therefore in the form of when it comes to company as an organization, some of the board of directors has to be independent. That means they should not be within your organization, they should be from outside, right? Now you know that you have heard the word autonomous colleges. Now what's the difference between a normal college which is affiliated to Bangalore University and how is an autonomous college different from this? So the answer is autonomous colleges have all the freedom and liberty to follow, to frame their own syllabus, to conduct their own examination and to declare the results. So we function like a mini university. So who sets the syllabus? Who sets the syllabus for autonomous colleges? And the answer is the teacher. Who values the answer scripts? And the answer is the teacher. So teacher has a complete control. So don't you think when you have complete control, this can lead to some sort of mishandling? Let's say I am the one who's setting the syllabus for stock markets in India, right? And what if I don't include some of the topics which are very relevant, which are very latest, just because I don't like teaching them? So I teach only those topics which I like. So who is there to monitor me? Is somebody there to monitor me? Evaluation, right? Since I'm doing the valuation, can I manipulate valuation correction, paper correction? The answer is possibility is there. So that's the reason what happens is that autonomous colleges, even though they have complete freedom, but they are governed by certain statutory bodies, right? So what it means is even though you have freedom, but you need to have certain academic bodies which will have a lot of members from outside. So autonomous colleges management is not only taken care by the uh, owners who started this college, but it will also have a lot of external member. Imagine I'm the autonomous college and my son is also studying in my college. Don't you think it will be a conflict of interest? Because I have access to everything. I have access to all the question papers. I have access to all the syllabus. I have access to everything. So what will happen in this case? So therefore, similar to a stock exchange, in case of autonomous colleges also, there are academic bodies which are responsible for taking all the decisions of autonomous colleges. Now, this academic bodies involves not only people within the management, but also outsiders. So members of the UGC, members of Bangalore University, members from corporate world, right? So all these people, they take part in the management of the college. So if the college is taking any decision which is actually not in the benefit of the student, not in the benefit of the society, the external members will object and they will not allow that particular agenda to be passed in the meeting, right? So that's the beauty. So there's a democratic setup. So the syllabus which I frame for my students will not be passed by me, rather passed by a separate body called Board of Studies, which comprises of experts, members of other colleges, universities. So they will scrutinize and they will decide whether what I've said is beneficial for the student and the society. So there is always an external check. So similarly here in case of companies, when we say ownership, so don't assume that ownership includes all the promoters who have started the stock exchange. Ownership here means the board of directors, which includes the promoters and also independent board of directors who are outsiders. So these outsiders are kind of watchdogs. So they ensure that all the decisions taken by the owners do not harm the interest of the shareholders and general public at large. So that's the reason SEBI insists stock exchanges in India to be a form of a company, because the management of a company is very transparent, very efficient, and that is what a stock exchange has to be: transparent and very efficient, because general public can't afford losing their money in case if there is any fraud in the stock exchange. So that's the reason SEBI says corporatization, point number one, that all the stock exchanges has to be in the form of a company. They should register as a company. Second, demutualization. You can't club ownership and management. Both have to be different. So demutualization means the segregation of ownership and management from the trading rights of the members of a recognized stock exchange. So when you are the owners, you can't do trading, right? So you can't trade. So that's the beauty, because if you allow the owners itself to trade within their own stock exchange, this will lead to conflict of interest. So that's the reason owners cannot trade. So ownership and management is totally different, right? Similar to what I said in case of a college, principal will not have access to all the question papers, because the question papers, the examination, the paper correction is managed by a separate department called examination department, which is under the leadership of controller of examination. So principal does not have access to COE's office. COE's office is managed independently. So there is a separation of ownership and management. Even though principal might be the owner of the college, but he does not get to participate in some of the other administrative functions which can create conflict of interest. So similarly, same thing happens in case of a stock exchange also. Now let's move on to the regulatory framework. Now, stock markets are governed by certain acts, and there are various acts which are which regulates the stock exchanges in India. The first one is called the Securities Contract Act. Now, as the name suggests, what is being traded in stock exchange? The answer is securities, shares, debentures, bonds, derivatives, right? So when you buy and sell, it is a kind of a contract. It is a kind of a contract, right? So there are separate set of regulations which are provided in Securities Contracts Act 1956. So this Securities Contract Act provides comprehensive regulatory framework. So it gives you complete set of regulation of transactions in securities through control over stock exchanges. So how transaction needs to be done, how the trading has to be done, what are the rules pertaining to trading, right? And in case if there is any conflict, if there is any dispute, all the regulations are clearly explained in Securities Contracts Act. So any kind of regulation which is not being followed, which is mentioned here, may lead to legal issues, right? So all the stock exchanges should ensure that they follow all the regulations mentioned in Securities Contract Act, which is mainly providing a regulatory framework for trading mechanism. So how the trading needs to be done, what are the rights of the buyer, what are the rights of the seller, what are the responsibilities and duties of stock exchanges, how the trading should be done, how the settlement should happen. All this are in detail explained in this act. Then you also have the Companies Act of 1956, but this got revised recently in the year 2013. So since stock exchange is a company, so stock exchange should also adhere to all the regulatory guidelines, regulatory framework mentioned in the Companies Act 2013. So a Companies Act is a uniform law relating to companies throughout India. So the Companies Act sets the code of conduct for corporate sector in relation to the issue, allotment, transfer of securities, disclosure to be made to the public, right? So all this is clearly explained here in the Companies Act. Then you also have the regulatory framework, right? Since India is an economy which is highly regulated, right? You should have studied this in economics, that there are various forms of economic systems: capitalism, socialism, mixed economy, right? So capitalism, companies get complete freedom, right? There's too much of freedom. Whereas in socialism, there is hardly any freedom for companies to do business because there's a lot of government intervention. And mixed economy is a combination of both. You get freedom, but you also get severely monitored, right? So in India, we follow mixed economic system in which you have a lot of regulatory interference, there are a lot of watchdogs for every sector, right? So for all these stock exchanges, we have Securities Exchange Board of India acting as a regulator, right? So similar to banks, we have RBI; for insurance, we have IRDAI; for airlines, we have DGCA; for movies, we have CBFC. So there is a regulator for every kind of activity. So therefore, for stock exchanges, it is the Securities Exchange Board of India. So we have Sebi Act, which was implemented in the year 1992. And the whole purpose of the Sebi Act is primarily for the protection of the investor. So Sebi safeguards the interests of the investors and also for promoting development and regulating the securities market, right? So security markets are regulated by Sebi, and the whole objective of forming Sebi is to protect the interest of the investors. And then we also have the Depositories Act. So depository is also a detailed topic which we shall be studying in your syllabus. So Depositories Act of 1996. So basically Depositories Act relates to the record keeping. So all the transactions that happens in the stock exchanges, it has to be recorded, and all the shares which are traded in the stock exchange should be electronically stored. So depositories main act, the Depository Act provides for electronic maintenance. Depository Act provides for electronic maintenance and transfer of shares in dematerialized format. So we have already discussed what do you mean by dematerialization. It's a process of converting physical documents into electronic entries. And all these electronic entries are managed by depositories who are created under Depositories Act 1996. And a couple of years back, I would say a couple of decades, not couple of decades, a few years back, in the year 2002, the Sebi, also the Government of India, Ministry of Finance, also applied a new law for stock exchanges. So stock exchanges also come under the ambit of this law also now. It is called the Prevention of Money Laundering Act. Now you guys know what you mean by money laundering, right? So to prevent money laundering, and this act also provides for confiscation of property derived from or involved in money laundering. So basically, money laundering in layman's language is when you convert your black money into white, right? So such transactions has to be monitored to ensure that black money does not get flown from other countries or within from India also into the stock markets, right? So there are plenty of there are many ways of doing it. So SEBI ensures that this does not happen. So therefore, Prevention of Money Laundering Act also gets applicable. It provides a comprehensive law which tells you what happens if any person is engaged in such activity, what are the punishments, or right, what SEBI has to do, what the stock exchange have to do, right? This is the regulatory framework of stock exchanges, meaning what are the laws which are applicable to stock exchanges. So these are the 5 laws which is applicable to all stock exchanges in India. So let's talk about the governing body. So governing body is the most important decision making body of the stock exchange, right? So governing body is the decision making body. So governing body is a group of people who formulate the policy and direct the affairs of a stock exchange. And further, governing body also has the responsibility to maintain an orderly and well regulated market, ensure that there are no frauds and there are no technical glitches, and the stock exchange has the best of the world class infrastructure to prevent any kind of risks. And the members of the governing body also elect the president and the vice president, who are the bosses of the stock exchanges, right? So it's the top body, right, which has all the powers of making important strategic decisions for the stock exchanges. So what does the governing body mainly comprises of? Governing body mainly comprises of the elected directors, government nominees, and public representatives. So all these parties, what you see here, they have a dedicated role to play, right? Government nominee primarily looks into compliance. Public representative primarily looks into the interest of the shareholders and society at large. Elected directors are mainly for governance and administration of the affairs of the stock exchanges, right? So overall, the governing body comprises of 13 members, There are 13 members who governs the stock exchange. Now, out of this 13 members, what happens here is six six members, right, are from the stock exchange. So if I am the promoter of a stock exchange, let's see, I'm the one who started the stock exchange. I have registered my stock exchange as a company, right? And I also have majority of the shares. And of course, my family members also have some of the shares. So what happens is from my side, since I am the promoter, so I can elect six members. So I can do a self nomination. I can elect six members from the stock exchange. Next, you also have public representatives. So here you see public representatives. So three public representatives, right? Then you also have from Sebi. From Sebi, you have another three. So 6 plus 3, 9, 9 plus 3, 12. And apart from this, there is one executive director. So this executive director is appointed by the stock exchange. So executive director is also one of the important administrative position, who along with the uh, chairman and vice chairman formulates all the important decisions. So he is the key decision maker, right? So this is the governing body, and finally you have the membership, right? So if you want to become a member of a stock exchange, uh, what are the qualification one need to have? If you want, if you're an individual, and if you want to become a member of a stock exchange, so membership, right? So there are five important uh, criterias which are being put forth by SEBI, especially for individuals who want to be a part of the stock exchange and become members here. Only members are allowed to trade in stock exchanges. So if you want to trade in stock exchanges, you can't do. You have to go through the members, and members are also the brokers, right? And brokers can be individuals. Brokers can also be companies, right? So both are possible. So if you're an individual and if you want to be an independent broker in the stock exchange, then you should have fulfilled all these six criteria. Criteria number one is that you should be an Indian citizen. So this is a very first criteria. In case if you're not a citizen of India, then you can't be a member of any of the stock exchanges here in India. Second is a very interesting one because it talks about bankruptcy, right? That means in case if you're interested to be a member of a stock exchange, you should not be a bankrupt, right? And you should not have defaulted with any other individual or financial institution, right? Neither you should have declared any kind of bankruptcy, neither you should be a defaulter. Right now, imagine I would have taken a loan from a bank and I would have become a defaulter. Now I'm applying for a membership in stock exchange. Stock exchange will reject my application because I've already defaulted a loan. So neither I should be a bankrupt nor a defaulter. Third, I should have the person who is applying for the membership must not be convicted for any kind of fraud or now never been convicted or been jailed for committing any kind of fraud or dishonesty. I should not have been booked for any kind of fraud case and dishonesty case, right? So this is also very interesting criteria. Criteria number 4, I should not be engaged. The person who wants to be a member should not be engaged in any other business connected with a company, right? So I should not be associated with any other company in any form, right? So I should not be engaged in any other kind of business. First, I should not be engaged in any kind of business. I should not be doing any kind of business. Second, I should not be associated with any other company also, right? Because if I'm associated with any other company, if that company is a part of the stock exchange, so then there is a conflict of interest. So therefore, I should not be associated with any kind of business. Neither I should be associated or connected with any kind of company. Criteria number 5, I must not be a defaulter of any other stock exchanges, not just in India, elsewhere, right? So I should not be a defaulter. It's not like I have defaulted in NSE, now I want to again become a member of Bombay Stock Exchange. And as far as the educational qualification is concerned, the educational qualification required to become a member of the stock exchange is 12th standard. So you should have passed 12th. So if you have passed 12th, you qualify in terms of academics to become a member of the stock exchange. So these are the important criteria which is put forth by Sebi for becoming a member, for individuals like us to become a member of the stock exchange, right? First, you have to be an Indian citizen. Second, you should neither be a bankrupt or a defaulter. Third, you should not have got convicted for any kind of fraud or dishonesty. Fourth, you should not be engaged in any other form of business or connected with any other company. And you must not be a defaulter with any other stock exchanges. And sixth, you should have a qualification of minimum 12 standard. So if you fulfill all this 6 criterias, then you are eligible to become a member, right? And I told you members are generally the brokers who do trading either for themselves or they can do trading for others also, right? So only members can trade, others cannot trade. So in the context of this members, right, why do they become members? Mainly to trade, right? So mainly for the purpose of broking. So when we say members, traders, or brokers in stock exchanges, so there are different categories of brokers available in the stock exchanges. Some brokers trade for themselves, some brokers trade for others, right? So every trader has a different method of trading. So let's understand what are the different kinds of brokers which are available in the stock market. The most popular and something with whom we are associated. So if you want to do trading in stock exchange, probably you will contact commission brokers, right? So a commission broker or a broker on the floor of a stock, a commission broker is basically a broker on the floor of a stock exchange who acts as an agent for a particular brokerage house and buys and sells stocks for the brokerage house on commission basis. So he acts as an agent for his customers and earns a commission for the service performed, right? So commission broker is not just an ordinary broker who does trading, right, for others, but he is a broker who does trading for brokerage houses. So imagine a brokerage house. So a brokerage house includes all your major stock brokers, right? So stock brokers can be companies, right? Like ICICI Securities, it can be HDFC Securities, it can be Geojit Financial, it can be SBI Securities, right? So this guy, this commission broker, right, he acts as a commission broker for major brokerage houses. That means he does the broking for all major institutions, right? So he accepts their, executes their orders, these brokers pay commission for them, and we open account with these brokerage houses, right? So he's the interlink between major brokerage houses and us. So they purely work for commission, right? And then we also have jobbers. Now jobbers are again brokers, but the only difference here is that jobbers deal in shares, debentures at an independent level. which means their job is to purchase and sell securities on their own level and get maximum profit. What it means is that jobbers cannot deal on behalf of public, and they're also barred from taking commissions. So this guy does trading for himself, not for others. Unlike commission brokers who trade for others, right? Who execute trade for others, a jobber does not trade for others, but he does trade for his own personal benefit, right? So that is what a jobber does. Then we also have something called as odd lot dealer. Now let's see who's this odd lot dealer. Now, as the name suggests, this odd lot dealer combines odd lots of securities from multiple buy and sell orders in round lots and executes the transaction in those round lots. So what he does, he accumulates shares in small quantities, and once he accumulates this, he sells all this in big quantities, right? So this is the opposite of what a retailer does. What retailer does, he buys in large quantities and he sells in small quantities. That is what a retailer does. But this is quite opposite. He collects all those odd lot shares which are leftovers in small quantities. He accumulates them and then he sells in large quantities. So that's the job of odd lot dealer, right? Then we also have Tarawani Tarani Wala. Now, who's this Tarani Wala? So Tarani Wala acts as a broker and as a jobber. So it's a combination of both. That means he does trading for himself and he does trading for others also. Right. So these are the different kinds of brokers in the stock market. So let me repeat once again. Commission brokers. So commission brokers are members of the stock exchange and they act as agents for a particular brokerage house, and they buy and sell stocks for their brokerage house on commission basis. And then you have jobbers who are independent brokers who trade for themselves. So they don't represent others, neither they trade for others for any kind of commission. So they buy and sell for their own personal benefit. And then we have odd lot dealers who accumulate shares in smaller quantities and then they sell them in large quantities to make higher profits. And then we also have Tarani Wala, who is a combination of a broker as well as a jobber, which means Tarani Wala trade for others and also for themselves. So it's a combination of both. Let's conclude today's class with one more concept called stock market classification of shares. Stock market classification of shares. Now, you people would have heard of two main categories of shares in academics and also prevalent in the market. The one is the uh, equity shares and the other one is the preference shares. But stock market has its own terminologies of shares, which is purely on the basis of their performance, which is purely on the basis of their nature, right? So stock market has six classification of shares. So these are the terminologies given based on the characteristics of the trading. So the first one is called the blue chip shares. Now, blue chip shares is not a new term. Somewhere you would have heard this blue chip shares. Now, what are these blue chip shares and why it is called a blue chip shares? Right now, similar to what you see in some sports in carom, for example, what does the red coin represent in comparison with the other coins? So red is the most expensive one, right? Similarly, in the game of casino, right? The blue chip is the most expensive one compared to all other colors. So the reason why these shares I've given the label as blue chip shares because these shares are shares of large and well established companies. So what are the attributes of a blue chip shares? First, these are the shares of large and well established companies. And these companies are financially very strong companies and they have an impressive record of earnings and dividends. So if you satisfy all these criterias, your company share or a particular company share will be labeled as blue chip share. There is no official criteria from the government as such, but this is the classification given by the traders. This is the classification given by the investors. So this is not an official classification from any government body as such, but these are the classification done by the people who buy and sell. So blue chip shares. So blue chip shares usually doesn't disappoint the investors. They always offer a very good returns, right? So if you want to consider a company as a blue chip company and the shares as blue chip shares, the company has to be large. When we say large, it basically means in terms of operations, in terms of market capitalization purely, right? So it has to be large, well established, not a new entrant, financially strong, importantly, an impressive and progressive records of profits. Then you also have growth shares. Now, which company shares are called growth shares? So the criteria is company should enjoy an above average rate of growth as well as profitability. So what basically it means is let's talk about education industry. Let's assume education as an industry. So in this education industry, let's compare all the brands, right? So let's say there is St. Joseph's College, there is Christ University, there is Jyoti Nivas College, there is Mount Carmel College, right? So these are some of the well established educational institutions in Bangalore, right? So these are well established educational institutions. So in this well established educational institution, what has happened is Christ has delivered a rate of return of somewhere around 20%. JNC is also more or less the same. MCC has given 19.5%. But what has happened, St. Joseph's has delivered 25%. So when we consider the average of all the colleges, the average of this particular college seems to be more than the industry average. That means this has outperformed the entire industry. So shares of such companies are called growth shares. That means you have to outperform your and not just your competitors, but the entire industry. So when you outperform the entire industry and when you shine in terms of profits, which are more than the average, then your company shares will be classified as growth shares. Then you also have income shares. Now, income shares are shares of those companies. First, they have fairly stable operations and relatively limited growth opportunities. And most importantly, they pay high dividends. So this last criteria is very important. They should pay high dividends. So this dividends will become income for the shareholders. So companies who pay regular dividend and companies who consistently pay an incremental dividend on a year-on-year basis. So those company shares are called income shares. Now we also have cyclical shares. Now, what do you mean by cyclical shares is that these company shares are highly vulnerable to business cycles. That means they are directly interlinked with the performance of the economy, right? Anyways, we'll discuss more about stock market classification. I think we are running out of time, so we will stop here, and we will continue in the next class. Okay, so as usual, in case if you have any questions, please message me. So I'll quickly take the attendance now.